Okay, today we're going to take this boring cell phone image and we're going to turn it into a much more interesting line and wash. Stick around. Okay, so I started out by just putting light pencil lines in the basic shape of the cabin. I don't want to get real detailed with the pencil work because it causes my paintings to tighten up later when I go to add the ink in. So we did this drawing on Arch's 140-pound cold press paper. The cold press has a little bit of tooth to it. It causes the pen to skip a little bit. It makes the lines more interesting. I don't worry about things being perfectly straight. I don't worry about things being picture perfect. It's just not that kind of drawing. We just want the essence of the building. I'm using a Lamy Safari fountain pen with a medium nib, and I'm using platinum carbon black ink in it. That requires a refillable cartridge. The pen does not come originally with that cartridge, but this really is a good everyday pen. I use it a lot. Notice that I hold the pen back away from the nib and I have a fairly loose grip on it. I don't want to get too tight and too rigid in my line work. I'll go ahead and speed up the video here so that we can get through the whole drawing process in a reasonable amount of time. You may be noticing that I'm drawing from top to bottom and left to right. That's just so I don't drag my hand through fresh wet ink. When you start adding in details, just make sure you don't do too much. It only takes a minimum number of lines to describe something, and that's all that you should put in. Let the viewer do the rest of the work. Okay, with the center of interest mostly complete, we're just going to add some scenery, give this cabin some place to be, maybe out in the woods. Okay, a few more lines, a few more trees, a little bit of this and that, and then we'll move on to the painting stage. Okay, taking a look at my palette. This is a Mission palette. It's a plastic palette with a rubber seal, so when I close it, it tends to keep my paints moist. If you're wondering why it's so dirty, I used the colors left over from the previous painting to mix colors for the next one. It tends to help gray things down and kills off some of those straight from the tube colors. I'm sure you're probably thinking I may never get enough paint mixed here, but honestly what I'm doing at this point is thinking. I haven't yet put a brush to paper, so I'm in no hurry. Once I start painting though, then I've got to stick with it till it's done. So at this point, I'm just working on a plan. Once I have a plan together, I'll mix up a big pool of warm color and a big pool of cool color, and then I'll start laying in the sky. Okay, working top to bottom, we're going to lay in a big wet wash. We're going to start to warm it up as we bring it to the horizon. We're going to skip areas around the roof that will make highlights later, and then we're going to bring that warm color all the way into the foreground. While the paper's still wet, we're just going to add a soft tree line off in the distance. Alright, we're going to start laying in some tree shapes. We're going to use cooler colors for the more far away trees, and then we'll use warmer colors and darker colors as we come to the foreground. We just want scenery back there. We don't want anybody to focus on these trees. We just want people to know that there's trees in the background. Alright, well the trees are mostly done. We're just going to lay in a few dots and dashes along the horizon, soften the top edge with a little bit of water just so we can establish a demarcation point between the foreground and the background. Alright, now we're just starting to add a little bit of color to the building. This is an old weathered cabin, so it's going to have shades of browns and blues in there. So we're just taking random cool and warm colors and filling it in. There's no real pattern, there's no right or wrong, it's just mixing it up. The trim on this cabin is a dark red color, so I'm using a little bit of the cad red, some alizarin crimson, and just a touch of cobalt turquoise just to darken it just a little bit. Notice I'm putting a dark color in the corner of these window panes and then coming back in with clear water just to give them a little bit of variation. It makes for a more interesting window pane, and I do it on other things besides window panes as well. Alright, now we've arrived at the fun part. We're going to start putting in our shadows. I'm mixing up a dark mixture of French ultramarine, burnt sienna. There's a little cad red left on my palette. I'll probably add some alizarin crimson to it just to get a nice purpley color. And then we'll lay in that cast shadow. It's going to be really dark, but the beauty of transparent watercolor is you can see through it and see the things that were underneath. Alright, so we're almost there, but the bottom of this painting needs a little bit of darkness to it. So I came in with clean water, and I'm adding just a little bit of a blue-gray mixture. I'll come back in, add a little bit of a brown mixture to it to gray it down, and that should be enough. Okay, now it's time for the final touches. We'll just use our ink pen to darken in some areas, and then we'll use a white acrylic marker and we'll come in and touch in a few highlights. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and make sure to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more.